Welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. Ev, how was your week or week and a half? I know you've been doing a lot of stuff. You got a lot of news. I'll let you tell it. But what is going on in the world of Evan Petzold and Savannah Petzold?
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from the Petzold family, which is me, Savannah, and our baby on the way. So if you didn't see on social media, the Petzold family is growing from 2 to 3. So it was Savannah and Evan. Now it's Savannah, Evan, and a baby as well. The due date is in April. Everyone is as healthy as can be. So we're very thankful for that. Mom is doing great. Baby's doing great. And I'm getting into dad mode and homeowner mode at the same time. So a lot of exciting things are happening. As for how all of this came to be, it actually ties into my honeymoon story for our listeners who remember that. So Savannah and I got married September 8th, 2023. We postponed the honeymoon for a year to save for a house. And then as everyone knows, we booked our honeymoon to Greece on August 10th, 2024. And the next day, the Tigers started their 31-11 run to the postseason. So we booked our honeymoon August 10th. The Tigers started winning August 11th. And then on August 12th, we found out we were pregnant. So we just got to 24 weeks now. We're officially 6 months in. And Mark, we have a lot of Tiger stuff to get into, from Gleyber Torres to Alex Bregman and so much more. And we're recording a few days later than normal because the Days of Roar producer, Robin Chan, had some much deserved time off. But that's the latest in my life. Baby on the way, home ownership, it's in full swing. Holidays were outstanding. It's always fun spending time with family for Christmas and the New Year. And in 2025, we are adding one to the Petzold family. It's going to be a blast.
So exciting. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year to everyone. I want to make sure that we thank all the listeners to Days of Roar, which has grown substantially over the 2024 year. You guys are great. You're loyal. We hope we do you justice. I'm sure we'll do lots of fun things in 2025. Obviously, the fact the team was miraculously competitive and went to the playoffs added to all of our fun. But we are here to talk baseball. I think we talked last time for a minute. We added another grandson to the Gorash grandson total, now up to 2. I got to hang out with both of them over the last week. And if you've never been a papa, once you're a papa, oh my God, I don't think there's anything better in your life. It's just an amazing, amazing thing. I don't even have words for it, but excited. All right, let's jump into the baseball because, Ev, there's actually some baseball to talk about. Let's jump straight into question 1 of the big 2. And got to start off with Tigers signed Gleyber Torres to a 1-year, $15 million contract to be the everyday second baseman in 2025. What do we think about the Torres signing? The two of us, give us some background because there's nobody better at digging up the story and the backstory than Evan Petzold. And then we can jump in a little bit to how it fits, how everyone's going to move around and what we expect.
So when I first heard the Tigers were signing Gleyber Torres, I did not understand it at all. There's been so much focus on the corner infield positions, first base and third base. And then the Tigers go out and sign a second baseman. On top of that, I didn't think Gleyber Torres would sign a 1-year contract. He was a 3-year, 4-year candidate for me. So when you combine that with the fact that he plays second base, he wasn't really on my radar at all when the offseason started. But the Tigers went out and they signed Gleyber Torres to a 1-year, $15 million contract, and he's going to be the everyday second baseman. And as a result, Colt Keith is moving to first base, which means Spencer Torkelson is going to be in AAA Toledo. So it's going to be Gleyber Torres at second base and Colt Keith at first base in 2025. And we'll talk more about Torkelson and Keith later on. Let's stick with the Torres signing for now, because after the infield shuffle, it makes a ton of sense to me since it's a 1-year contract. I love this deal so much for the Tigers. I think it's a home run signing by Scott Harris. There's no risk with a ton of upside. This guy's only 28 years old. His birthday was just 20 days ago. So to get an all-star caliber player on a 1-year contract at age 28, that's really impressive. And the reason why Torres signed a 1-year contract is because he told his agent at Octagon to get him a 1-year contract. He plans to make more than $100 million next offseason as a second-time free agent. But first, he has to improve his performance and get that back to all-star caliber levels. So he didn't even want 2 years with an opt-out clause. He just wanted a straight 1-year contract to bet on himself, get back to free agency as soon as possible, and try to get more than $100 million next offseason. That's his goal. I love that. And also, he has a $5,000 assignment clause in his contract, which means the Tigers have to pay him $500,000 if they trade him at any point in the 2024 season. It was negotiated into the contract by Torres' agents to try to keep the Tigers from trading Torres at the trade deadline because Torres doesn't want to be traded. So maybe the Tigers trade him, but if they do, they'll have to pay him. Or maybe the Tigers don't trade him if he projects to be a key piece of a deep playoff run. Like if the Tigers are running the table in the AL Central, and Gleyber Torres is a big reason why, keeping him makes a lot of sense for reasons beyond just winning on the field. Because if the Tigers keep him and he has an all-star caliber season, they could extend the 1-year qualifying offer after the season. This offseason, just people make sure you remember, the qualifying offer was $21.05 million. If Torres declines that and then signs with the new team, the Tigers would get draft pick compensation. So there are multiple ways in which this plays out into the Tigers' favor by it being a 1-year contract. And obviously, Gleyber Torres is looking to make $100 million and get back to free agency as soon as possible. That's his side of the goal. So it works out great for both sides. And then you look at the player, because we have to evaluate the player when we're talking about, a signing and what we think about it. Gleyber Torres hit .257 with 15 home runs, a 9.8% walk rate, and a 20.5% strikeout rate in 154 games in the 2024 season. He played the first 7 seasons of his big league career with the New York Yankees from 2018 to 2024. 2-time All-Star, made the All-Star game in 2018 and 2019. He's hit at least 20 home runs in 4 of his 6 full seasons, and he hit 38 home runs in 2019. He's a career .265 hitter. He has a career .774 OPS. Yes, he had his best seasons in 2018 and 2019, but from 2022 to 2024, Torres has been worth 7.9 FWAR, which ranks 58th place among 95 position players, which with at least 1,500 plate appearances. So he's a winning player in the past 3 seasons, and he still has that late 2010s upside because he's only 28 years old. As for the profile at the plate, he makes smart swing decisions. He ranks in the 92nd percentile in chase rate, the 70th percentile in walk rate, the 60th percentile in whiff rate, the 57th percentile in strikeout rate. So his walk rate's above average, his strikeout rate is average, and his swing decisions are elite. That's a profile that I'm really excited about. And I do have some concerns about the defense, but let's not forget what the defense looked like in 2024. Colt Keith was a below average defender at second base. Spencer Torkelson was a below average defender at first base. Yes, Colt Keith got better at second base by the end of the season. And yes, Spencer Torkelson got better at first base by the end of the season, but still, they were both below average defenders at their respective positions. Now, Gleyber Torres is the second baseman, and he's led MLB second baseman with 18 errors in 2024 and 15 errors in 2023. And in 2024, he was worth -11 defensive runs saved at second base. So the metrics paint Torres as a terrible second baseman. And maybe he sucks at second base, but I don't care. And here's why I don't care. It's because Colt Keith is playing first base. And even if Colt Keith is just as bad as Spencer Torkelson defensively, the Tigers are still getting a massive upgrade on offense by moving on from Torkelson. Torres Keith versus Keith Torkelson, it's not even close. I don't care about the defense. The Tigers need to score more runs. I think we can all agree on that. Gleyber Torres will help the Tigers score more runs, especially compared to Spencer Torkelson. That's why I love this signing.
Well, I can't disagree with you. It's a weird signing. It is calculated risk. It is essentially a trade of Spencer Torkelson for Gleyber Torres. And let's be real blunt about it. Their walk rates pretty close to the same thing. Their home run rates may not be far apart. Torkelson may hit a few more bombs, may not. But let's be really honest here. Spencer Torkelson, no matter what you think, if you subtract 3 months out of his career, he's a terrible player. He's a 95 WRC plus hitter. And at first base, that's not acceptable. The Tigers were either 26th or 27th in first base WRC plus last year. Just not a position you can be power deficient, offensive productivity deficient. And they were presented with an opportunity. It could be transitional. could be a one-year Gleyber Torres circumstance, but let's be blunt about it. You and I have discussed the idea that Colt Keith is eventually going to be a first baseman as early as last July. He was probably far more defensively competent than we thought at second base and was extremely good, not extremely good, but solid in July, August, September. Yeah.
He got a lot better.
And Gleyber Torres, after really doing a dive on it, he's not great at second base, but he's not nearly as terrible as we think he is. It's more a -1 to -3 OAA kind of second baseman. And based upon what I saw with the improvement of Colt Keith and how well they positioned him, I would expect the Tigers to improve Gleyber Torres defensively solely based on positioning, if not the work they do with their staff. So as a hitter, he didn't just hit 20 home runs 4 times. He hit 24 or better home runs. He has not been a massive benefactor from Yankee Stadium. He hits the ball to all 3 fields. He walks 10%. He chases almost not at all. I expect him to probably hit second in the Tiger lineup, and he's playing in the AL East for 7 years, Ab. I mean, in New York. That's just a pressure cooker of a proportion that players, if you're not tough-minded or pretty damn good, it's pretty tough to survive there. He's did it for 7 seasons.
And then there's the fact that Torres is a right-handed hitter. And that's how we know the Tigers are going to add one more position player to keep improving on offense. Like, I think that's the biggest thing about all this too, is it's a weird signing, yes, but at the same time, it allows the Tigers to upgrade both corner positions because you sign Gleyber Torres to play second base, you move Colt Keith to first base, and you can still address third base. And I think that is the part that makes all this come together. It's not just like, oh, are the Tigers going to upgrade at third base or first base? It's no, they're going to do both by way of adding a second baseman. And it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense until you put it on paper. And you look at the fact that when we came into this offseason, Scott Harris said he wanted to add a right-handed hitter to balance the lineup because the Tigers were too left-handed heavy at the end of the regular season and in the postseason. So the Tigers added Gleyber Torres, a right-handed hitter. But who did they replace? They replaced Spencer Torkelson, a fellow right-handed hitter. So they swapped a right-handed hitter for a right-handed hitter. That does not solve the problem of having too many left-handed hitters. The lineup imbalance, it remains. It's still an issue. They still have too many left-handed hitters with only 41 days until pitchers and catchers report to spring training. They have the same number of righties and lefties right now that they did at the end of the 2024 season by adding Gleyber Torres and swapping out Spencer Torkelson. It is a righty for a righty swap. So the Tigers have these notable left-handed hitters. They have Colt Keith, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Parker Meadows, Jace Young, Trace Sweeney. All those guys, left-handed hitters. The only legit right-handed hitters to support them, it's Gleyber Torres and Matt Vierling. Maybe Gleyber Torres is a number 6 hitter. Matt Vierling should be a number 7 hitter. Therefore, the Tigers need a top-of-the-order, all-star caliber hitter to support Meadows, Green, Carpenter, Keith. Those are going to be 4 of the first 5 hitters in the lineup, and they're all lefties. You need a legit right-handed hitter in there to balance the lineup, which the Tigers didn't do when they swapped Torkelson for Torres, which was swapping a righty hitter in Torkelson for another righty hitter in Torres. They still need another right-handed hitter to balance out the lineup, and that's where Alex Bregman enters the picture.
Tigers raised the floor. They didn't change the dynamic yet. So let's jump into question 2 of the big 2, something everyone has been waiting for us to discuss. What are the chances the Tigers sign Alex Bregman? The competitors for him seemingly have been falling by the wayside. I would not necessarily believe that's 100% true. I remind everybody that nobody had Arizona signing Burris. So, teams come out of nowhere to sign guys once the price becomes more manageable. So tell us what you know about Alex Bregman. Tell us about what he's waiting for on price and how the Tigers figure into that. And then we can discuss some ways that I've tweeted out that everybody could walk away from the table happy. And I want to know what you're hearing because nobody's a better detective than Evan Petzold.
Well, nobody expected the Arizona Diamondbacks to sign Corbin Burnes, so you're right. You can never rule out that mystery team coming out of nowhere, but here's the latest, which I've reported at Freep.com and I've discussed as well on MLB Network Radio. The Tigers have strong interest in Alex Bregman to play third base, even after signing Gleyber Torres to play second base. To me, from the outside looking in, it seems like the Tigers are all in on Bregman as long as that value aligns. Both sides are engaged in ongoing discussions with mutual interest, but there is a gap in value as Bregman's market narrows. The reality is Bregman is running out of teams to sign with because he isn't returning to the Houston Astros. He turned down a 6-year, $156 million offer from the Astros. Then the Astros pivoted away from Bregman, trading for third baseman Isaac Paredes and signing first baseman Christian Walker. So Bregman won't reunite with the Astros in 2025. Without the Astros, Bregman has the Detroit Tigers and the Toronto Blue Jays. The Boston Red Sox, kinda, sorta, maybe in the mix. The New York Yankees are not in the mix, from what I've heard. The New York Mets aren't in the mix, at least not right now. They're worrying about Pete Alonso. The Philadelphia Phillies have Alec Boehm. And yes, maybe a mystery team swoops in, but let's be real. Right now, with what we're working with, it's the Tigers, the Blue Jays, and maybe the Red Sox. And I don't think the Red Sox are real factors because Rafael Devers does not want to move off third base, and the Yankees don't want to trade Tristan Casas. Yes, Bregman is willing to play second base, and he said that. The Red Sox have top prospect Kristen Campbell, who plays second base and is ready to make his MLB debut. So if the Red Sox aren't in, and we've already heard the Yankees aren't in, and the Mets are busy working on Pete Alonso, and the Phillies have Alec Boehm, then it's the Tigers and the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays are the front runners for Anthony Santander, along with the Los Angeles Angels. I reported that earlier this week. Yes, the Tigers had interest there. Anthony Santander seems like a backup plan if they miss on Bregman, but the Blue Jays and the Angels are the front runners for Anthony Santander. So what if the Blue Jays get Santander? Then what team is left for Bregman? If it's not the Red Sox, if it's not the Yankees, if it's not the Mets, if it's not the Phillies, and if the Blue Jays go out and they get Anthony Santander, then who's left for Bregman? It's the Tigers. It's the Tigers. And the fit is perfect because Bregman and the Tigers has always made perfect sense. He turns 31 in late March. He hit 260 with 26 home runs, 44 walks, and 86 strikeouts for the Houston Astros in the 2024 season. From 2022 to 2024, Bregman averaged 25 home runs and 154 games played per season with an 11.1% walk rate, a 12.4% strikeout rate, and a 798 OPS. He's a two-time All-Star, two-time World Series champion, 9-year MLB veteran. He's a Gold Glove winner. He's also a respected leader in the clubhouse. He's got 99 games and 434 plate appearances in his postseason career. The Tigers are trying to learn how to win consistently. Got a young team trying to learn how to win year in, year out. Bregman would lead them there. He's a right-handed hitter, so he balances the lineup. He's a middle-of-the-order bat. He's a Gold Glove third baseman. He's one of the top leaders in baseball with more postseason experience than every active player except Jose Altuve. On top of that, Alex Bregman has close relationships with Tigers manager A.J. Hinch and Tigers bullpen catcher Chris Chinea. The Chris Chinea connection dates back to LSU when they were teammates for 3 seasons and roommates for 2 of those years. They're still super close to this day. I think that connection is a really big deal, along with the A.J. Hinch connection. That's why the interest is mutual. Bregman, from what I understand, wants to play for the Tigers. So if the value aligns on both sides of negotiations, both in years and money, this guy, Alex Bregman, is going to be a Tiger in 2025 and beyond if the value aligns because there is mutual interest between the two sides. As for Anthony Santander, I do want to touch on that because that interest is real. He turned 30 in mid-October. He hit 235 with 44 home runs, 58 walks, 129 strikeouts for the Orioles in 2024. He's a switch hitter. He's better against right-handers than left-handers, but he does damage from both sides of the plate against both-handed pitchers. He's averaged 35 home runs in 153 games played from 2022 to 2024. I don't like the fit as much as Bregman because Santander plays right field. I like Matt Vierling as an outfielder, not as a third baseman. I think the Tigers feel the same way. So if you sign Santander over Bregman, then Vierling plays more third base. Santander also has some chase issues in his game. It's not as bad as Javier Baez, but he chases too many pitches outside of the strike zone. For that reason and for general roster construction reasons, Santander is just not as good of a fit as Bregman, along with Bregman bringing the leadership and the winning. Santander interest is real, but as I've reported, the Blue Jays and the Angels are the front runners there. Like I said, it seems like the Tigers are all in on Alex Bregman. They want to make that happen. Alex Bregman seemingly wants to be a Tiger as well. There's mutual interest. Seems like a match made in heaven. We'll see if it crosses the finish line or not. I don't get the sense that anything is imminent, But when that time comes, we'll see if they're able to push it across.
All right. Well, personally, I've heard the Alex Bregman Wikipedia biography way too many times here in the last 2 months. So I almost hate that we have to review it twice a month, if not more. So the real elephant in the room, Evan, how much money do you think it's going to take to sign him? How are we going to bridge the gap? We know he wants the 2 in front of it. We know nobody's giving him the 2 in front of it. So where do you think the compromise is between parties? Heard a few rumblings from some sources I have that Chris Ilitch is pretty plugged in on this deal, believe it or not. And what's it going to take to get the deal done?
That's a great question. I mean, we'll see what it ultimately takes. I think Scott Harris would probably prefer 5 years for Alex Bregman, maybe even 4 years. I don't think he wants to sign Alex Bregman to a 6-year contract, which would lock him up through the 2030 season, which would be his age 36 season. The Tigers would prefer a 5-year contract, which is through the 2029 season, which is his age 35 season. This is me speculating just based on what I've heard. It's more than just a dollars issue. It's a years issue as well when it comes to that gap in the value. I don't think it's just money. I think it's also years. And so when you put 2 and 2 together, it seems like maybe Scott Harris and the Tigers would prefer a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal as opposed to a 6-year deal. And I think Scott Harris probably has the years and the money that he's willing to go do. And he's going to sit on that for as long as he needs to sit on that. Like, I don't know. Alex Bregman turned down 6 years, $156 million from the Astros. He might not sign for what he turned down from the Astros. And he certainly isn't going to sign for $200 million, which is what he initially wanted. And the Tigers were never going to go there. Like, is anybody offering him $200 million right now? No, because he would have already signed. So do you think anyone's really offering him $180 million? I'm not so sure about that. If there was that kind of offer out there, he probably would have accepted it already and taken what he could have gotten. So I don't know if he's going to even get more than the $156 million that the Astros had on the table. So Scott Harris is playing the patient route, which is exactly what I reported the Tigers were going to do coming out of the general manager meetings. Now, they've turned up the heat on Bregman since then, but they're still taking the patient approach to this. I think that's so smart. Like, I imagine if Al Avila would have been patient with Carlos Correa. If Al would have waited until after the lockout to sign a shortstop, the Tigers would have signed Carlos Correa for like 3 years, $105 million with opt-outs after the first 2 seasons, instead of Javier Baez for 6 years, $140 million. Baez signed in December 2021. Correa signed in March 2022. All it would have taken was 3 months of patience from Al Avila and AJ Hinch as well, because he was on that deal, that Baez deal as well. But anyway, maybe the Tigers want a Correa-like contract with Bregman and are waiting around to see if something like that happens. So I like the approach by Scott Harris. I don't think Alex Bregman is getting $200 million from any team. I'm not so sure he's getting $180 million. And I really don't know if he's going to get $156 million from any team, because I just don't know if teams view him that way, especially if you turn down the offer from the Astros and the market is narrowing. Like, the market's narrowing. There's no question about it. So if you're asking me to take a guess, I would guess that 5 years, $150 million is where it ends up. We can speculate about years and money all day. We will see how this plays out. But I think Scott Harris has years and money that he's comfortable with, and he'll hold his ground into spring training if he needs to. And we'll see if the strategy, however all this unfolds, ultimately pays off.
Okay, well, I'll give you the old man's business take on all this, because I can tell you right now, 5 years, 150 is not getting Alex Bregman signed. Then I'm going to ask you this question. If you lose Alex Bregman over, say, $10 to $15 million spread over 5 years, with some of it deferred, you think that's a good thing for the Tigers? Or do you think that immediately it inserts Scott Harris into an oven like a cupcake? Which one?
I'm not so certain. I mean, I think if you're going to set a price and you're going to try to go get him for that price, I have no problem with somebody standing their ground and saying, hey, this is what we're comfortable offering and we're going to stick to it. And look, like, if it really does come down to, hey, it's, a couple $1 million off per year, whatever, like, you're going to hear about what offers are. Teams will hear about what offers are and stuff like that. And they'll be able to up their offers or decrease their offers if they need to. But Tigers need to up their offer by a couple million per year to go get it done. Sure, maybe. But like, again, if they have a certain structure in mind that they want, I think they should stick to it. I don't think that they should just deviate from it. I think that if there's a plan moving forward and it involves a specific contract structure, whether it's years, dollars, deferrals, whatever, opt-outs, however they want to structure it, and if that's what they're comfortable with, you have a guy whose market is narrowing. He's not going to Houston. You look around the league and not going to New York, Neither of the New York teams seem interested. Boston, maybe. Toronto, they're always in the mix for people, but they never end up getting anybody. And the Red Sox aren't really making real moves either. They're kind of in on everybody, but not getting anybody. So I don't really know if he's going to have a ton of offers out there to choose from that are high value offers. That's why I think that like 150 million might actually make some sense. But sure, if it's a few million a year, I'm sure the Tigers would be willing to up their offer if they need to get something done and to find that middle ground. Both sides are trying to do that. Both sides are willing to find middle ground. They've expressed interest in trying to get there. We'll see if it ultimately happens, but I don't really understand the premise of your question. Like, I think if it's $10 million a year off or something like that, I don't see why they would do that. And I don't think they should. I think if they have an idea of what they want, what fits for them and what fits for their long-term plan, I think you got to stick with that.
Well, what I'm trying to say to you, Evan, is how integral do you think Alex Bregman is into what the Tigers are trying to build and how, what the caliber of team they're going to put on the field, how it would impact their opportunity and window to win, knowing your ace left-hander, one of the three best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in baseball, healthy, is going to leave in 2 more seasons. So your window's closing. I just want to understand how much does Alex Bregman add to the likelihood they're competitive or could win everything.
He adds a ton. You add Alex Bregman to this team and you are the favorites to win the American League Central and you have a good chance to try to make a run in the postseason. But at the same time, if Steve Cohen, for example, the owner of the New York Mets, if he threw $200 million at Alex Bregman and the Tigers were unable to sign Alex Bregman, I would not sit here and tell you, oh, like the sky is falling, the Tigers are doomed. So that's when you talk about like, if you missed out on X amount of, by X amount of dollars or whatever, like we don't know what offers are out there. We don't know exactly how this is all going to turn out when it's all said and done. Do I think Alex Bregman is extremely important to the 2025 and 2026 Tigers with Tarik Skubal on the roster? Yes, 100%. There's no question about that. But at the same time, if they don't sign them, are they doomed? Like, no, I don't think that's the case. Like, yes, does Alex Bregman make the Tigers better? There's no question. But I don't think that it's like a Alex Bregman or bust when you look at the 2025 or 2026 season. Yeah, you love to sign him. But at the same time, what happens if Steve Cohen swoops in and says, yep, I'll give you $200 million? Are we just going to say the Tigers are doomed in 2025 and 2026? Because I don't think that's fair either. And that's kind of my point.
It's not my point either, Ev. But if I said, if I said to you, he was attainable and there's a sweet spot in between a $200 million offer, which is not coming because it would have come already if somebody was going to make it, and a number to get him to sign, which they're obviously not at because he's not signed. So the compromise, and I've kind of alluded to this in a few tweets I've made in suggesting some ideas, is to make the back end of the contract kind of not hard to swallow. So it reduces the risk. The amount of money, it's kind of foolish to argue over an extra $10 or $15 million when he's obviously going to sign a minimum of 5 years, probably the option for a 6th year. So something like what's been done quite a few times by really smart teams already this year, $40 million signing bonus, $20 million of it deferred, $2 million a year for 10 years. I'll be dead when he collects the last check. 30 million, 30 million, 30 million, 30 million. Now already you're at 160 million after 4 years. The 5th year, $10 million. The 6th year, an option for $5 to $10 million on another number, $10 or $15 million. Now you're getting close. You're at essentially what Boris can sell as a 6-year, $170 million deal, almost $180 million deal. You can even add deferrals in with some of the money. It makes it much easier by using an upfront bonus, some of which you can defer. A team in California seems to be using this often to sign very good players. Other players are also signing things like this. The Tigers need to swallow, make the team better, front load the contract, get into real baseball here in 2025, build on it before their window closes because, like I'll give you an example. The 2017 Houston Astros, after being really good in 2016, didn't make the playoffs. Arizona Diamondbacks go to the World Series 2023. What happened last year? Didn't go to the playoffs. Things happen. Scott Harris, if we're after 4 years and all he has to show for what he's done is one playoff run on a miracle run to the playoffs over a 45 games period of time, people will start asking questions. It starts reminding people of the San Francisco Giants, maybe, where Farhan Zaidi, where Scott Harris came from, who loved to rummage around in dumpsters looking for players. He now unemployed because the team's not good. So you have an opportunity. You got to get creative with the structure. You got to close the deal. Closers, not posers. That's what I'm asking for. And it's not a big difference between what he wants to pay and what Bregman would sign for. Get the job done. That's all I got to say about it.
Scott Harris, I hope you wrote down Mark's contract offer for Alex Bregman. I know I didn't, but we'll see what happens.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Ev spoke to Yankees beat writer Pete Caldera about Gleyber Torres. He'll be back with that in 60.
I'd like to welcome Pete Caldera, New York Yankees beat writer for the Bergen Record, part of the USA Today network, to the Days of Roar podcast for the first time. We are going to be talking all things Gleyber Torres. Pete, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Evan. Appreciate it.
So before we talk baseball, I need to ask you about your career as a jazz singer. Because you've been a baseball writer for a long time, but you've also been a jazz singer for a long time. How did that come to be? And yes, I want to hear the full backstory.
Well, I'll do the quick version first. It probably had its origins with a Yankee spring training a long time ago in Tampa at a piano bar called Donatello that's still there with two great musicians, Kitty Daniels and her husband Majid. And we'd have dinners there with a lot of the writers, and then we'd repair into the piano room for a drink and a few songs, and kind of blossomed from there. And when I covered the New York Mets a little later, Bobby Valentine was the manager of the Mets at the time, and he took an interest in my singing a bit. One night we were in San Francisco and walked over to the now defunct piano bar called Lefty O'Doul's, and gave the piano player a $50 bill and said, let him sing anything he wants. And that was a fun night. And that kind of led to getting the attention of a band leader named Stan Rubin in New York City, where they do a Sinatra show every Saturday night, which they've done for over 20 years. And I've got to sing with the Stan Rubin Orchestra and got to fill in on occasional Saturday nights for the big band show when Stephen Maglio, who does the show, can't perform it, but he usually does it almost every night. He'll be doing it this Saturday. But I was at the Carnegie Club where he performs last night, New Year's Eve. So that was a lot of fun, been able to do that. So that's basically the backstory. It's a fun, nice little thing to do other than the baseball, obviously.
One more question on that. Did you ever consider doing music as a full-time gig, and kind of what has kept you in the sports writing industry? How do you balance them being a sports writer and also a singer as well? How often do you do it? What is some of that like?
I haven't really thought of that part of it. I mean, I don't consider myself a musician. I can't read a note. I can't play an instrument. So can carry a tune fairly well, and that's about it. So I like my day job, right? Covering baseball. So yeah, I don't know if I could have, I like the balance of this. Actually, it's something to do occasionally during the season, and obviously a lot more in the off season, but it's kind of taken off a bit. You get people that want you to perform at their parties or weddings or events or whatever, and you have to balance that off the baseball schedule. But it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing to be able to do.
All right, so let's dig into the baseball, talking about Gleyber Torres. He signed a 1-year, $15 million contract with the Tigers. Were you surprised the Yankees never made an offer to keep him, or was he just not a fit into what they needed this offseason?
Yeah, I think the combination of maybe his career in New York had run its course, and the fact that he was getting expensive for them. And I think initially they were putting all their savings and every dime they could into the Juan Soto pile. And when that changed, it didn't really change the trajectory of Gleyber Torres' future in New York. I think that the handwriting was sort of on the wall even back almost 2 years ago, that this was probably going to be a marriage that would just end when Gleyber was a free agent. That said, the Yankees do have a vacancy in their infield right now, but I think you further saw the handwriting on the wall when they traded for Jazz Chisholm last trade deadline, because Chisholm moved to third base. He's a natural second baseman. He's a better fit, at least on the Yankee infield, at second base. And then you go either with your in-house candidates at third base if you're the Yankees, or try to go out and get another professional third baseman. I would think that the Yankees are probably looking more to upgrade their infield defense right now, and they've got Paul Goldschmidt at first base. But, when you've imported a Max Fried, a ground ball throwing left-hander for $218 million, you're going to want to know that left side of the infield is going to catch the ball. So you get Volpe at short, and then we'll see who they wind up with at third base with 6 weeks to go here before spring training.
So Gleyber Torres joined the Yankees from the Chicago Cubs in the 2016 Aroldis Chapman trade, made his MLB debut at age 21 in 2018, made the All-Star game in 18 and 19. He hit 62 of his 138 home runs in his first 2 seasons. He hasn't made the All-Star game since then. When you reflect back, how do you view Gleyber Torres' career with the Yankees?
Yeah, I mean, it started sort of meteoric, right? He comes up and this was a well-heralded prospect when they got him from the Cubs in the Aroldis Chapman deal. At the time, it was a little surprising at the 2016 trade deadline that Brian Cashman traded both his big-time relief pitchers and sent Chapman to the Cubs. They would later get him back, but in free agency. But Gleyber Torres was the like the marquee player in that deal coming on back to the Yankees. It was a big Cub prospect, and the fact that you see a lot of well-hyped prospects come to New York and not perform or sort of fade away. Yankee fans knew who Gleyber Torres was before he set foot in Yankee Stadium, and then he makes 2 straight All-Star teams and hits 38 homers and 90-something RBI in his second year. And he looked like a guy who was on a big-time perennial All-Star trajectory. And then the pandemic year came, and then after that, Gleyber never returned to those heights that he had in his first 2 All-Star seasons with the Yankees. And even last year, you wondered if you knew that Gleyber loved being a Yankee and wanted to stay. And you wondered in his free agent walk year if some of that distraction or what he was dealing with, just mentally kind of processing that, had impacted his play. Because for the first 4 months of 2024, he was a below average major league defender and offensive player, and then picked it up the last 6 weeks of the season, had a decent postseason too. So he kind of rescued his 2024 season from about mid-August on. But I think we all kind of thought after those initial 2 years that this could be a perennial All-Star, and it never worked out.
I want to go back to the beginning too. Like, was there a lot of pressure on Gleyber when he made his MLB debut? And then what was it like for you to watch what he did in 2018, in 2019? Like, he was so young, only in his early 20s, but he hit 271 with 24 home runs in 123 games in 2018. Then he followed that up by hitting 278 with 38 home runs in 144 games in 2019. Those first 2 seasons were something really special. Did he have a lot of pressure coming in? And then kind of what was the reaction like when he gets on that stage and he does what he did in those first 2 years?
Yeah, I think whatever pressure he might have experienced was probably offset by his youth. He's a very young player when he came up to the Yankees. Was he barely 21 years old at the time? And, the fact that was a star-laden team that he walked onto anyway, with guys like Judge and Giancarlo. So I think initially that if he was feeling any pressure, you didn't get the sense that it was impacting him or he was thinking about it at all. I think after that, it was the pressure to live up to what he did in his first 2 seasons in the Bronx, because people become accustomed to seeing that player. And as we said, that this guy probably spoiled a lot of people when he came out of the blocks as good as he did those first 2 seasons. Then he was kind of chasing the ghost of what he had done in his rookie and sophomore seasons and never panned out. I think that's where, if there was any pressure on Torres, it was after that, not during his first 2 seasons.
You teased it a little bit there, but like what happened after those first 2 seasons? And I'm specifically talking about 2020 and 2021 because the numbers just weren't the same. He was OPSing like 850 in his first 1,000 plate appearances. Like, did pitchers just make like a super late adjustment to him? Because his OPS was about 700 in 2020 and 2021. That's a huge drop from where it was before that at 850. And it was at 850 through 1,000 plate appearances. So was it a late adjustment that the league made, or did something happen with Gleyber Torres?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of it might have been the defensive struggles, perhaps taking that to the plate. You know, there's a guy who came up as a shortstop, moved to second base with the Yankees, and then sort of digressed in a way at defensively. Certainly there were defensive lapses that were sort of, and base running lapses too, that could be mind boggling at times. But he did play the position and does play it, I believe, with a flair and an ease for the most part. But it's the mental mistakes that occasionally get to him that you can't escape in New York, and you're going to be under scrutiny for that. They expect you to play at a high level, and with the Yankees to play at that high level every day. He's sensational at going back at pop-ups, but then he's got that casual way about him, and he dropped one this year in a game. I think it was in August, and obviously you get the scrutiny all over again about, is it his casual play versus something that he's just not paying attention to? That has happened on the bases occasionally with some mind-boggling plays on the bases where you don't think you wonder if he's paying attention, or why did he do that? And it led to him getting benched in a game when he was not exhibiting much hustle. Now, that could have been a product of him having, I think he had it was either a quad or a groin strain during the year that he might have been protecting. But it's not a good look when you do that in a night game at Yankee Stadium in front of 45,000 people and millions watching. So those type of things, I don't know how much that impacted Gleyber in his overall game, or if he took some of those to the plate with him, but certainly not the same. And the power kind of, that wasn't there as much as we saw in certainly his 38 homer year. He didn't come close to matching any of that. So that kind of went away. You wonder maybe if he was chasing some power too that he had lost, that he exhibited before. Not really sure, but this is still in a large respect a player in his prime. And I don't know if he'll return to those all-star levels, but certainly you would think that there's more in the tank than what he's shown possibly in the last couple of years as a Yankee.
Well, there was a pretty big difference too, though, from what he did in his first 2 seasons and then what he did in 2020 and 2021. And then it seemed like 2022, 2023, and 2024 were kind of somewhere in between that 2018-19 and 2020-21. Like, the last 3 seasons were not as good as those first 2 years, but they also weren't as bad as the 2 years that followed. How did you see Gleyber Torres get back on track, if you will? But at the same time, what maybe kept him, and maybe you hinted at it a little bit with some of the base running stuff and the defense, like what kept him from getting all the way back to that all-star caliber performance that he showed in the first 2 seasons in his big league career?
Yeah, I mean, possibly the position changes and played an effect on him too. Not really sure, but I think that he certainly was a player that understood the gravity of and the attention and what was expected of him. I think he was always a good teammate. He was certainly a good guy to deal with. I don't think he shied from too many things or anything really, that he kind of faced up to his mistakes and some of his shortcomings and always vowed to get better. And he did prove that this year, 800 plus OPS from about August 13th on, and it kind of coincided with that one game that with Boone pulling him out of a night game at Yankee Stadium for lack of hustle. So he could certainly get his attention with discipline and with focusing on what he needed to focus on. And I don't think he ever shied from his responsibility. I mean, this is a guy that wanted to be, I'm sure he still wants to be a Yankee, wanted to be a Yankee his whole career. Talked to him about that last season too. He became a father in the last 2 years. I think he's matured a great deal in his time in New York and certainly knew that what the Yankee fans expected of him. And I thought he had a gracious way of saying goodbye to them and hello to the Detroit fans too. So I think you're always going to get his best effort, but there is an element of of hustle and defensive lapses that certainly have been part of his game that bear watching as you go forward.
Those are the big questions because we know what the upside is, especially, Tigers fans coming to learn about Gleyber Torres. And we've seen him over the years, of course, but not like you have. The one thing everybody's asking is because we've read that, there are these questions about Gleyber's effort level and maybe better question for you to answer. Like, is there substance to that? I know you mentioned Aaron Boone benching Gleyber this past August for the lack of hustle. He owned that mistake, Gleyber did. There was also that game against the Mets where he didn't hustle out of the box on a ground ball. And then he didn't want to go to third base when the Yankees got Jazz. And he said he wanted to be a second baseman. Like, is there an effort problem with Gleyber Torres or is there more to it than just that?
Personally, I would think it's an occasional lapse of concentration and certainly not a concentrated effort problem with Gleyber. I don't think he could survive even as long as he did in New York as a starting player and not care every day. So I don't think that's a part of it at all. But certainly in a 162 game schedule, I'm sure everyone has a lapse or two. Maybe not Juan Soto at the plate. That seems like he's locked in every time. But with Gleyber, if it was more than occasional or it was occasional, it was noticed. And that became part of the Gleyber Torres narrative and was still a part of it this year. But I don't think it's ever for a lack of effort. I think, as I said, I think he would have been out of New York a long time ago if he didn't care about his profession.
And then how about the defense? I don't want to lump, that question with my previous question, but he did. I mean, he led all second basemen with 18 errors in 2024, led all second basemen with 15 errors in 2023. He was worth -11 defensive runs saved last season. Is the defense that bad or is the eye test better than maybe some of the metrics and the numbers would tell you?
If you watch him every day, I mean, you saw him make some terrific plays. Going to his right, he can make that play. I mean, he's got a good arm. And on pop-ups, right, he goes after them with ease, and 99.9% of the time he makes those plays pretty much. He's good at that. But it's the occasional play where you wonder if there's a lapse of concentration or daydreaming or something like that. I don't know, but I would just say that on balance I still think he's a solid professional defensive major league second baseman, and I don't know if a move to third base eventually would help him there, but or if that's something that another team down the road would consider. But right now at age 28, I think he's still a big league second baseman.
He's going to be playing second base for the Tigers. When you look at what he's going to bring to Detroit, what should Tigers fans expect from him? We talked a little bit about the defense, some of the base running. Sure, I get that, but he can still hit. I mean, he's still got the bat and maybe not as much power as he showed earlier in his career, but the guy can hit. Like, would you say that he's definitely bringing that to Detroit? And what do you think about just maybe what he brings and then what the upside looks like?
For a time, even this year, he was the Yankees leadoff hitter, and they kind of moved him around the batting order. I don't see him as a middle of the order staple per se, but if he's batting 6th, 7th in a big league order and can produce 25 homers and 70 something RBI, I think that's in the range of what you might be able to expect. Comerica Park might tamp down his power numbers at home, but generally speaking, I think he's still capable of being a 20 to 25 homer guy and a 70 to 75 RBI guy if he's out there for 150 games in a season. And he does play the game with a joy. I mean, he is a generally positive guy, likes his teammates, likes coming to the ballpark, likes interacting with people. And I think that you're going to see a guy who does have a joy for the game. And I think a fresh start really could propel him to even greater heights, because for all his emotions about wanting to stay a Yankee, I think that a fresh start might do him really, really, really well here.
Fresh start coming in Detroit, but to bring it back to the Yankees, playing in New York is a lot different than playing in Detroit. The game is the same, but the atmosphere is different. The expectations are a lot different. And New York is the biggest of the big markets. How did you feel like Gleyber handled playing for the New York Yankees through all the ups and downs from start to finish?
Yeah, I think he was good for all the reasons I mentioned. I think he absolutely genuinely loved, putting the pinstripes on it every day and being a part of a team that had that legacy and trying to win a championship. And ultimately, the World Series championship part never materialized during Gleyber's time with the Yankees. But I think you're gonna see and you're gonna get a guy who just genuinely loves playing the game. Now, that said, I think, and this goes for almost any place you go to in a new place, especially when you've had some track record of success and you're coming from a market like New York, that it's probably imperative on him to get off to a good start in Detroit, get the fans on your side, get some positive momentum going, and then sort of build off that, because we've seen it happen in New York. Obviously, this happens in any market too. You come with some all-star credentials, had some success somewhere, go to another place, and it doesn't start out well, and then things could kind of spiral in the wrong direction. So, and I think it'll help too that Gleyber's sort of close to home when he starts spring training. I mean, the Yankees train in Tampa. He's got a home there, and Lakeland's not that far away. So I think there'll be sort of a comfort level when he's in that spring training. He'll be seeing a lot of his old teammates around, I'm sure, in those 6-7 weeks when we're in camp in February and March too. So that could help his transition as well.
Last thing for you, how was your experience covering Gleyber Torres? Because you covered him from the day he became a Yankee until the very end. Any favorite moments on or off the field? Anything that stands out to you?
Just that he was always available and always willing. And I was always impressed by this about Gleyber. When he came over from Venezuela as a Cubs prospect and then suddenly finds himself traded to the Yankees, he embraced being the big piece of that trade, that there was a lot of there was a spotlight on him the moment he wound up in the Yankees minor league system. And he also took great strides to learn how to conduct himself in English with the press. It's not something that was required of him. No one with the Yankees, obviously they have interpreters but he wanted to do things on his own in English and speak to the fans through the media as best he could communicate. And certainly great credit to him to just do that on his own, and with the help of the organization, the classrooms and tutors and things like that. That was always an impressive part about Gleyber Torres, that he took it upon himself to want to communicate to his new fan base and took that responsibility on. And then, as I mentioned, I did a Father's Day story about him a couple of years ago too, after the birth of his son, Ethan, and just his perspective had changed. Obviously, you become a new father. You're playing not just for yourself, but your family and what that meant to him too. So he's a guy that gets it, and he's a really pleasant guy to be around. And I know I'll miss him in the Yankee clubhouse.
Well, I'm really excited to get to know him in the Tigers clubhouse. It's great to hear all those things, especially as a fellow beat writer. But all right, Pete, that's all we have for you. Thanks for joining and explaining everything there is to know about Gleyber Torres and giving us some insight into your career as a jazz singer as well. It's pretty awesome. So thank you so much for doing this.
I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You got it. Thanks. Anytime.
Everyone, that was Pete Caldera, New York Yankees beat writer for the Bergen Record, part of the USA Today network. We have more to discuss about the Tigers, but first, let's take a break.
All right. That was Pete Caldera about Gleyber Torres. We're going to talk a little bit about Colt Keith moving to first base, replacing Spencer Torkelson. Ev, tell me what you're thinking about that. We've discussed this before. It's kind of inevitable with what they have coming up through the farm system, the way they want to balance the team. It seemed like it was something that was probably for 2026 or 2027. I don't really mind that they're accelerating the timeline. He can always go back to second base if he has to. Tell me your take on it.
Yeah, Colt Keith can always go back to second base, but the move to first base was going to happen at some point. Like I talked about this several times, really since like the summer. It was like the Tigers knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen. The fans knew this was going to happen. Like there's no question, Colt Keith, he is going to be a first baseman at some point. The question was, when will he become a first baseman? And turns out he's going to become a first baseman in 2025. So that move makes a whole lot of sense. I'm surprised the Tigers went ahead and did it as soon as they did. Like I thought they would slow play that, drag it out a little bit. But again, like I think it says something about the urgency to win, that they're willing to go find a second baseman, plug him in at second, move Colt Keith to first base, understanding the need to address the offense. That's exactly what happened. And so we'll see how Colt Keith does. He's been already working at first base, taking ground balls. He's been in contact with infield coach Joey Cora. So a lot of that's going to be the footwork around the bag, making the right reads on certain plays that he's going to have to figure out, which is going to be a little bit different than second base, but still on the same right side of the infield. I think that's going to be helpful for him. And ultimately, I think he's going to be all right. I could see him being serviceable. I think he is athletic enough to be okay. Yes, he's built pretty big. Yes, he's going to hit for a lot of power. Like, he is that kind of guy. He's going to grow into his body a little bit more. That's why, there was always that thought that he would move to first base. But I think he's going to be able to handle himself just fine. I thought the footwork got a lot better on double play turns when he was at second base, especially down the stretch last season. I'd like to see that footwork translate to what he does at first base. So I have kind of sneaky high hopes for Colt Keith at first base, and we'll see what happens. But in terms of how it plays out, like from a long-term standpoint, the Tigers do have a first baseman coming in Jose Bregman. Talked about him many, many times. He ranked in the Arizona Fall League, but he doesn't have much experience beyond low A Lakeland. So he still has to get through West Michigan and Double A Erie and Triple A Toledo before he gets his opportunity in the big leagues. You thought about him as maybe being somebody that would be like maybe at the earliest 2026, but maybe more like 2027 or late 2026, early 2027 maybe. So the Tigers have some time. If they're willing to roll with a Colt Keith at first base, you could play Kevin McGonigal at second base. Like, there's options. You can make things work because of what they have depth-wise in their system. You have Kevin McGonigal, who could be a shortstop or a second baseman. You have Jace Young, who can play second base, also can play some third base. You have Hao-Yu Lee, who plays second base. Like, there are options when you look at what the Tigers have from an infield standpoint. But those guys that I just mentioned, they're not first basemen. So Colt Keith can play first base, and you figure out what you got at second base moving forward. Maybe it's McGonigal, maybe it's Lee, maybe it's some combination of those guys. Maybe it's Jace Young. Like, if you keep him in the organization and he rakes in Toledo and you want to see him get some runaways as second baseman in 2026, maybe that's the case. Tigers have options now, and I think that's a really big deal. I like Colt Keith sticking at first base in the long haul. It just makes so much sense to me. I'm glad the Tigers finally did it. Again, they were going to at some point. The question was just, when would it happen? And it's happening now.
I love what they did. I think it's probably one of the most forward-thinking things they've done in the Harris tenure. It really sets them up in the future to be pretty flexible and accumulate pretty valuable major league assets. When you have guys that can hit, have 6 years of available service time and are seemingly going to be everyday regulars in the major leagues. And, look, we don't know that about Young. We don't know that about Lee. We almost for sure know that about McGonigal, but I think we need to find out is if Jose Bregman, if Josu Bregman is as good as we think he is, he's going to have to be somewhere. And that's either going to be DH or first base. The idea that Colt Keith can play both first and second, it really helps them be flexible. I think we're going to really find out a lot about what 2027 and going forward from there is going to look like this year. And Kevin McGonigal and Bregman are going to have a lot to do with how they think about that. If Kevin McGonigal can play shortstop for a few years or maybe longer, because who's to say that Rayner doesn't continue to grow, because he is not a small boy. It's very Corey Seager-like in build and swing. He may be a third baseman, not a shortstop. So, there's a lot of flexibility to what's going on 2, 3, 4 years from now. But that really doesn't address 2025. And after you make the playoffs and win a preliminary playoff round, start playing for 2027. That's not part of my vocabulary right now. You need to build on what is. You need to leverage what you got. You need to try to win. That's why we had that discussion about Alex Bregman in the first part of the show. But I love what they did with Colt Keith because, as we said, doesn't necessarily mean he has to stay a first baseman. Just means he has to learn how to play it and see what happens. The question now becomes, what happens to Spencer Torkelson, Jace Young? You can even throw Casey Mize into that discussion. Matt Manny, you got some actual assets to make a deal with. What do you think happens there? Is there a deal that we're not discussing, or do you think something goes on at the trade deadline in July? What exactly are your thoughts about what the possibilities are there?
For Spencer Torkelson and Jace Young, I think the Tigers should keep him. Jace Young is 24. Spencer Torkelson is 25. Both former first-round draft picks. These guys have minor league options. They can go play in Triple A Toledo. You don't have to worry about losing them on waivers. Jace only played 91 games in Triple A Toledo and only 47 games in Double A Erie. Let's not forget, Justin Henry Malloy played 199 games in Triple A. So could Jace benefit from another 100 games in Toledo? He could probably fix the swing and miss issues, learn how to hit velocity, develop at third base while staying ready at second base. I don't know. I think everyone else, all the other 29 teams would look at Jace Young and they'd have the same questions that the Tigers have. So fix those things. And then let's see what his value is like both internally and externally. And as for Torkelson, I don't really think he has any real trade value unless it's like a Torkelson for Henry Davis trade with the Pirates. But what are you actually getting in that deal? Like, that's why I don't think the Tigers will or should trade Torkelson right now. On top of that, what if he finds a swing? Like, what if he makes a real adjustment? The Tigers have been asking him year in, year out to make a change, do something different. And Spencer Torkelson has said over and over again that his famous quote is, "My swing is my swing." But what happens when my swing doesn't become my swing anymore? What happens if he makes a real adjustment and becomes a 250 hitter with 25 plus home runs? I'm not saying that's likely. I'm not saying I'm expecting that. But what if he is a legitimate swing change away? Torkelson's been stubborn in the past. He hasn't wanted to change. So they're going to go and they're going to let him sit in AAA Toledo. And what if he ultimately does make that change? And what if that change leads to a guy who hits 250 with 25 homers? That's a real dude who can help you win games. Like, he's not far off from hitting 31 home runs in a big league season. Like, you got to be talented to hit 31 home runs in the big leagues. You don't just run into 31 homers. So if he could become a real hitter, not just a power hitter, but a real hitter, a guy who hits 250 with 25 plus, that's a dude who can help you win games. And maybe the plan changes a little bit for 2026. Maybe in 2026, if Torkelson finds himself, maybe you play Torkelson at first base and you play Colt Keith at second base, because you can do that because you've given yourself the flexibility and you've allowed Torkelson to develop and maybe make some real changes. So I don't like the idea of the Tigers trading Spencer Torkelson or Jace Young. I think they both have maybe more internal value than they do externally. I think there's more development for Jace Young. Again, only 47 games in AA and only 91 games in AAA. And Justin Henry Malloy played 199 games in AAA. I want to see more Jace Young in AAA. I want to see Torkelson go to AAA and try to figure things out with the swing, because I think he is a swing change away from maybe being a pretty good hitter. Like, you don't go 1-1 for no reason. So I think it's risky to make a Torkelson for a Henry Davis type trade, because Henry Davis has no value. He has no value at all to you if you're the Tigers and you're making a deal like that. And that's a hypothetical I'm just throwing out, but like, it's a bad X-top prospect for a bad X-top prospect. And I think both those guys have way more value internally than they do externally. And I think they got options. Send them to Toledo. Why not? And then what happens if an injury goes down? What happens if Colt Keith gets hurt and you need a first baseman? Well, now you got one that you can call up and you can use. And he's going to hit you some home runs. He's going to draw you some walks. Speaking of Torkelson, of course, I mean, he obviously has some swing and miss issues now, but like, you got to have depth in your system. But this is high value, high upside type depth to the Tigers. I'd like to see how things play out at AAA before we just move on from these guys and try to trade them.
Don't disagree with you. I think right now I hold on to everything. You need to see how it is. You always have injuries to concern yourself with. These things have a way of working themselves out. The Tigers are in it. I'm sure they'll be looking to make deals at the trade deadline. What competing team is not? And it gives them assets to deal in that type of circumstance. So I think it's a pretty simple answer. All right, time to get out of here. So before we do, because it's 2025, Ev, tell me a couple things before we get out of here real quick, what you're looking forward to in 2025, maybe some players you think are going to have a good year that are flying under the radar, or just, what you're excited about that you think might transpire in 25. A couple things.
Riley Green, watch out. I don't think he's going to win the MVP, but I think he might get MVP votes. Parker Meadows, can't wait to see this guy over a full season. I'm really, really excited about that. Can't wait to see if Colt Keith gets into more of his power. He's talked about that. He wants to hit for more power. The question is he going to be able to do it? I think he's got the makeup to get the job done. He's a hit first type player, but he can pack a punch. We saw him do it in the minor leagues. So I want to see Colt Keith get into more power. I want to see Kerry Carpenter stay healthy for a full season. I'm really excited about that right there. We know what we're going to get from Tarek Skubal. I think we know what we're going to get from Reese Olson. Jackson Jobe, I'm interested, but at the same time, I'm like cautiously optimistic there. It really comes down to the offense. What do you get from Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Colt Keith, Parker Meadows? I think that's going to be the story of the season. And then on top of it, I'm just interested to see if the Tigers can win the AL Central in 2025, because AJ Hinch has come out and said that he wants to reclaim the American League Central crown. The Tigers haven't done that in 11 years. And you remember, you go back to those Tigers teams, they were 4-time division champs in a row from 2011 to 2014 with Miguel Cabrera, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Victor Martinez, Prince Fielder. Obviously, a lot has changed since then, but now the Tigers are coming off a year in which they had the youngest team in the big leagues, and they were surprise contenders. It's just second full season under President of Baseball Operations, Scott Harris. That was 2024. It's going to be his third full season in 2025. And they go out and they get their first winning record since 2016. They advance to the postseason for the first time since 2014. And they win a playoff series for the first time since 2013. And this is not like superstars of old. This is a talented young core. You got Skubal, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Colt Keith, Parker Meadows. Winning the AL Central in 2025 would be a huge step for this franchise. I'm interested to see if that happens from a team standpoint. And then obviously I already mentioned my individual players that I'm just kind of fascinated to see.
I want to see if two guys that really stir the drink big for them, really big, Parker Meadows, Kerry Carpenter, can put together a full major league season of contribution. Kerry Carpenter never had over 400 at-bats in an MLB season. Could be a 3.5 to 4 WAR player if he can get 450 plus at-bats. Parker Meadows, holy smokes. I mean, you saw everything you needed to see the last 60 days of 2024. That's a 4 WAR player waiting to happen. Just impacts the game so many different ways. Did so many good things. Sprayed the ball all over the field. The home run off of Suarez, the home run against Houston, so many defensive plays, took so many bases, just does so many things to help you win. Excited to see, believe it or not, Cater Montero win the 5th spot in the rotation. Just loved the changeup he was developing the last 3 or 4 outings. Just, there's something there. I don't know what it is, but I like it. I'm also interested to see if both Casey Mize and Matt Manning can be converted to be relievers. I really hadn't thought about Casey Mize being a reliever. I had a thought about it last night. The more I thought about it, the more I liked it. Requires him not to get a pitch of spin over that much. Could go to fastball split, do it in 1 inning bursts, throw 98. He's got the right mentality for it. I also think Bo Brisky is going to end up being the closer. So those are my weird things for 2025. We'll see how I do on that. Ev, I want to wish everybody a great 2025, you included. Got a lot of great things to do. I'm excited to get on to 2025, but it's time to get out of here. So I want to remind everybody to please like, rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. You can find us everywhere. And always embedded in every single Evan Petzold article. And nobody cranks out articles like Evan Petzold. He is just like a one-man magazine. It's just amazing how much content he puts out. I want to wish a happy new year to our editor, Nicole Avery Nichols. And thanks a lot for 2024. To the Magic Man, Robin Chan. There is nobody better. Love you, Robin. Thanks for everything. Looking forward to making all kinds of great content with you in 2025. Love my grandson, the spectacular Braden Michael Gorash. Oh my God, what a child. Shout out to the soon-to-be mommy, Savannah Petzold. What an exciting 2025 for Savannah. Until next week, hopefully when we can discuss the signing of Alex Bregman.
We'll see.
Peace.